on Facebook, YouTube's coming up, and I'm fighting with Instagram here.
All right, thanks for joining us, everybody. We're just getting things up and running. I think Facebook is live.
There we go. I think we're good on everything now.
Okay, looks like we're up and running. Well, hopefully you guys made it to Wednesday of this week to join us.
Sorry about that.
We had something that happened on Monday that we weren't able to meet, so apologize about that. But we did put out a notice, and hopefully, it's always interesting too when we do it on different days. We maybe get different group of people or different, people have different schedules, so some people can make it, some people can't, whatever the case. But thank you for joining us. As always, question and answer session. All automotive topics. Certainly anything 034 Motorsport product related, company related. You love us, you hate us, throw it out there. Last week we took on some, someone who was upset about the delays for our B8 intakes, and we addressed that. And we have since shipped more intakes and are shipping more this week. Our US-based air filter supplier has been delivering product for us. And so that's been good news for us. We've had delays on silicone, which is recovering as well. We had like a crazy amount of silicone show up yesterday here that we're processing currently. So things are looking up. The ports are starting to open up, and I think COVID cases in the US are staying relatively low, and things are reopening more. People are getting vaccinated, so we have about a third of the company here who's had at least one vaccine so far. So we're on our way. But questions about Nate and I, anything you want to know about us, anything you want to know, we both in the industry for combined over 50 years of experience. So ask your questions and then we'll get added to our queue. If you see me looking down, this is just my phone.
We're not ignoring.
I'm not on TikTok, trust me. I'd like to be. I'm just looking at the questions and answering them. So All right. Any Mark 7.5R goodies coming this year you can speak to? These kind of questions always catch me out because, well, let's see. We have a new intake coming.
There's a new intake coming,
like an X34 style intake, which will be more of like what we call a filter on a stick. So it'll have a carbon fiber shroud and a very large diameter hose that leads to the turbo inlet with a nice big filter. It'll be very open. The air filter won't be shrouded. And most importantly is it hits a different price point. So it'll be kind of in the sub $350 price point, which I think a lot of people these days are looking for that.
We've also we've talked about this a couple of times, and I think that's one of the upcoming questions. I saw it elsewhere. So we've got software in the works for that. We are finalizing, and we'll be putting out more info on our DQ381 files, in addition to the some of the advanced features we've talked about.
So we do have DQ3.
We do.
We just haven't put them on the website.
We've got to get on the website. We've got to get all that marketing media finalized.
But if you want one, shoot us an email. We'll get it for you.
Yep. We are working actively on that platform, and we'll have some pretty cool software goodies coming. In addition to the hardware, this is something we haven't really dove in headfirst on, but we are producing a line of billet accessory caps. Thanks to our friends at Racing Line, we've been able to work with them and kind of 034ize some of their accessories for anyone who'd like to brand their engine compartment 034. Obviously, the coolant cap doesn't help the coolant stay in the reservoir any better than the stock. Yeah, no, it's not gonna change the performance wise.
You don't gain 10 horsepower or anything like that. But that's cool. We are working on a strut tie bar solution.
Yeah, we've got such a
rear hatch support brace.
We've got such a full catalog for that car already.
Yeah, we do have probably bigger than anyone in the industry. We have more. So there's probably at least one other thing I'm leaving out, but Someone says, I'm a developer with a passion for cars. Where does one get started with ECU, reverse engineering, and tuning? Any good resources or test labs? I mean, this job it's hacking.
Basically, yeah. I mean, it's
and if
it was yeah, it is
reverse engineering.
It's reverse engineering.
So if you specialize in reverse engineering, you could certainly do a lot of good. The software side, the tuning and calibration side is you could go to school for automotive engine calibration, learn all the theories and stuff. But honestly, if you start tuning standalones and just start doing some reading and blow a few motors up, you'll figure out pretty quick what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, it depends on what you're really interested in doing with your setup. If you're looking at it from a reverse engineering side, what really are you trying to do? If you're looking to recalibrate the vehicle for to retune it and get some different performance or different calibrations on it, that's not really as much reverse engineering these days. That's just on the calibration side. Now, if you have an ECU that you can't flash or that no one else can flash, then you're going to be getting into the reverse engineering side, which are two very different disciplines. So the calibrating is very much its own thing. There are good resources these days for that. There's EFI University and a bunch of material out there to kind of get your feet wet and figure out some of the basics.
But nowadays there is. When I learned how to tune, it was
there was a couple of books and theories and whatnot on some basic like thermodynamics and how an engine works and the combustion cycles. But these days it's there are some good resources to kind of just figure out what some basic calibration practices entail. The reverse engineering side, that's a whole nother that is very processor and the software dependent on what exactly you have, what model of car, what generation of ECU software is on it. And I would suggest if you want to get started, I would start with something older, like mid 2000s, early 2000s. That's going to have the most information available to you online to kind of look up and start building your kind of knowledge base on how to progress, because generally all these ECUs are iterations of previous versions, just like everything else in the world. So once you figure out kind of the older stuff, you can keep pushing and see how they did it on later and later models.
Yeah, I would say maybe you'll agree, Nate. If you want to start dabbling with it, buy like a 1.8T A4.
Yeah, 2.7T or 1.8T A4.
And go find, I'm sure there's flashes floating around online. Figure out how to flash the ECU, get in there, see if you can access the maps, see if you can start tweaking.
Yep.
I know that's pretty much how Nate started. And
yeah, I mean, it's how everybody has to start somewhere.
Steve, our developer, one of our developers, also just decided he actually bought an APR file for his car and figured there's got to be a better way to do this, and just went online and started figuring it out. The newer stuff's harder to get into, but the old, like the A4 is pretty much open source.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's so many resources out there, and it does help a lot in learning how things work, how things are structured, how the ECU kind of got their own little operating systems and how that interacts. And it does apply. So it's certainly the cheapest and easiest to get into the older stuff. And then you can, if you really get your head around it, you can pretty easily start putting that towards the new stuff. As far as tools and test suites, it's really going to depend on the ECU you're exactly working on. There's different tools that are better at some than others. There's IDA Pro, there's GDRA, there's a number of reverse engineering tools out there. It's going to depend on what you're comfortable with and what the tool does.
All right, so that should give you a good start. Best of luck.
Yeah, it's a steep hill.
Nobody wants you to be able to do this.
Exactly.
It's not like developing for Cisco where there's like a tool set. This is like, Bosch is like, fuck you. You're never going to get into this. I hate you. And that's where you start. And there's no tools. And
that's all of them: Bosch, Continental, Delphi,
any OEM. And then and then the security just improves and gets harder and harder and harder. Of course, as exploits come out, that changes. But initially, these ECUs are completely locked NSA level security. So But by the time you have ME7, I mean, that's just, nobody cares about that.
Yeah.
It's open source.
Yep. And I mean, in the days ME7 came out, it was it was going to be like an untunable, impossible to crack ECU, and
people were doing like Zener diodes, throttle body,
cut defenders, and all these other things to try and get around the software with some hardware hacks. But eventually people figure out the exploits, the weaknesses, get in there, and then once you're in, you can do what you want with it.
All right. Can you add launch control to a 2009 B8 S4?
Yes, we have not come across a DL501 that we have not been able to add launch control to yet. It may not be something we have on the server right away. We generally will have to validate the exact transmission code you've got, double check your current software, and we'll have to make sure we can get files up for it. But to date, we haven't come across one that we haven't been able to get working.
Yes, so hit us up. We'll be happy to help.
Might take a little bit if we don't have it already up there, but the hardware and the transmissions, they're essentially the same. We haven't had any issues with them. Will
your B9, assuming MG1 S4 tuning, be remote flashable?
Yes.
Yes. All of our new tuning will be remote flashable using our Dynamic Plus cable.
Yep, and that's B9, both A4 and S4. So we'll have both of those coming.
But figure, I mean, we have some older stuff where you have to send us the ECU. Is that still an issue on some stuff?
It's still an issue on some stuff, and it's just down to it's a lot of the older stuff. So
like ME7.
We're talking ME7 stuff right now.
But that's not what they're asking.
It's not something we've finalized the server flashing for, just because the numbers of both the cost of the flashes, the number of flashes we're doing these days for the older platforms is.
I just want everyone out there to understand that all flashes that we release that are yet to be released will be remote flash.
Yeah.
Rumors of an MQB software update. Yes.
Yep. That was what I touched on earlier. We will be updating MQB software. Both ECU and TCU updates are in the pipeline.
Yeah.
All kinds of fun stuff.
And good news, if you already have our tuning, you will get any updates for free.
Yep.
That apply to your stage or the product that you purchased.
Yep.
And we're looking into full E85 setups, auxiliary fueling setups, and then just adding. We're constantly developing and innovating our software, and if we do that, say in B8 S4, we can apply a lot of those improvements to our older tunes. It just takes time to go through. So it's not like the file was bad before. It was good, and we're just going to make it better because of all, the things that we're doing now didn't even exist anywhere in the world 2 years ago.
Right.
So
and a lot of this is just it's feature additions, and you'll have more more options.
How do I find out about tuning updates for my vehicle?
Ties in nicely.
Yeah.
We are trying to get better and better at that. It's a pretty labor intensive process for us right now. We're working on making that more efficient. It takes quite a bit for us to get notifications out for updates.
Ideally, you'll get an email from us.
Yeah, we've done a couple for B8s and some software there for some of our past updates.
But you're welcome to, we'll talk about it on the air here.
Yep.
And you're welcome to log into your Dynamic Plus flashing account at any time to see if there's any new or different files available for your car. So if I were you, on average, I would just once a month log in and take a look.
It doesn't hurt anything at all.
And just see what's going on. But like Nate said, for us to go through and pull reports on, we can't just pull reports.
Unfortunately, it's very complicated.
Currently,
right now.
we will
we're
in the
working on
future,
it.
but it makes it harder to do a lot of easy, quick updates for customers.
Yep.
Let's see. On the DAZA, why does the 91 file have a different redline than the E85 file?
It's a couple of reasons.
Also, why does it sound like the 91 file on the car pulls boost at higher RPMs? So 2-part questions.
Yeah, well, that's kind of part of it. Is there's the 91 itself is just kind of out of steam with what the motor wants for what the motor's able to run
on that
timing and power wise with the octane. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to just keep pushing it. If you're not going to get much more out of it. The turbo is losing efficiency out there. Everything's getting hotter. So the 91 just doesn't deal with it as well as the higher octane fuels, like E85 in particular. So that's the primary reason.
Yeah. And, a lot of people think more boost equals more power, but really more timing is what gets you more power. And
if you are ignition advance,
if you have 30 pounds of boost with 0 degrees of advance, you're not going to make as much power as 15 pounds of boost with 15 degrees of advance. So it's both, but more boost isn't the only thing that makes power. So there are you'll notice on our files in general that we will run less boost to make more or the same power, and a lot of that is by optimizing timing. So when you're kind of at the top of the tuning range, you have to make some decisions. Does the motor make more and better reliable power with more boost and less timing, or do you pull the boost back, add more timing, and make more efficient power? So there's a balance in how you weigh those various factors, and then of course there's your fuel ratio. There's a whole host of other tuning factors that you're balancing. But no matter what you do, you make a compromise. So if you think more boost makes the most power, at some point you're now compromising timing. And so now the power starts going down, the temps start going up. At some point you run too much boost and not enough timing, the piston melts. So, there's a very optimal path through all those variables, and the tuner has to make decisions. And that involves knowledge, testing, logging, all validation, all the things that you need to do but logging is a big part of it, is being able to see all the different variables. I have a question, but related to camber plates. I recently bought a used set off a 2018 RS3. The set was used for 1 year. Do I need to replace the rubber inserts before I install? Secondly, this is my daily driver vehicle, and I'm running the stock 19-inch wheels with low-profile tires. I'm worried the ride quality will deteriorate and tire wear will increase at the expense of better handling. I rarely track the car. I received the camber blades in a package deal when I bought the 034 lowering springs. Okay, so you don't need to replace the bushing. We've been selling that product for about 5 years. I don't know if we've ever had to replace the bushings for a customer. So the density line rubber bushing inside that mount is very reliable, and it's probably going to last a lifetime. Again, we've never had anyone else, I don't think, need that replaced. Like, it didn't wear out. As far as NVH, you will notice a slight increase in NVH. In my experience, driving many cars with these, it's minimal.
Yeah.
You'll possibly hear the road more.
Your tire selection is going to be a bigger factor on the NVH than just these mounts.
As far as tire wear, there's no free lunch here. So if you do a lot of hard cornering and you don't have any camber, then you're going to wear the outside of the tire. If you put the camber plates on and you just commute in a straight line all the time, then you'll start to wear the inside of the tire more. We haven't seen any really rapid tire wear, where it blows out a set of new tires in 5,000 miles.
It is one of those things where a couple degrees of camber is usually much less of a factor than toe on the tires for inner or outer edge wear in normal commute driving.
Toe's a big one.
So be sure the car's aligned properly after the installation. That's going to go a long way.
I would suggest installing them. You will be blown away at how much better the car drives and handles. There will be probably some amount of accelerated tire wear, but you'll probably find that it's well worth it. And it's not as much as you feared.
Yeah.
But if this is just a straight line car, then I wouldn't waste your time. I would zero out the alignments, and
factory line it.
And do a factory and be done with no camber.
But if you hit a track day with this thing, you're going to toast the outside edge of their tires in one track day if you don't have these in. So. Yeah, it really depends what you're looking to do with it.
On track, it's only upsides. You only increase your tire wear because you will destroy the outside of the tire with no camber. Hopefully that was helpful, but I'd say put them on, enjoy them. They're awesome. My Mark 7.5 Golf R versus B8.5 S4 for daily and 3 to 4 track days a year. Which would you recommend?
That's a tricky one.
I'd say it's a tie. I mean, they're both.
They drive very differently on track, and it depends how the B8.5 is set up. If it's got a sport diff, if it's DSG, suspension, and whatnot. The B8 the S4 is going to need a little more for track prep. You will need brakes to really actually use that thing on track.
You probably will with the
The Golf R is better. It's not. Yeah, that's
we put brakes on the
it's
S3.
certainly not unlimited brakes on that thing by any means, but it's a little better out of the box than the S4.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I see the mods being much different between the two cars.
Yeah, they're pretty similar. It's more that they'll drive very differently on track.
The Golf R is going to feel more tossable, more like a hot hatch, which is what it is.
Yep.
You're gonna be able to just throw it around more, get the car really loose, and power through corners. The B8 has a longer wheelbase, so it's going to be a much smoother ride around the track.
But and the multi-link suspension is way smoother on track.
It soaks up the bumps way better, and it's not going to be quite as tossable as the Golf R, but both are going to be really fun to drive. What was I going to say? Oh, I would say if your home track Streets of Willows, I'd go for the Golf R. If it's a higher speed track with higher speed corners and not as tight switchbacks or first or second gear turns, then I would say the B8 S4 would be really nice with its longer wheelbase and better suspension. Design.
Yep.
They're both stage one, they're both going to be quick cars. The B8, I think, if you go full stage 2 plus the 85, it's going to be a lot more power than a Golf R. But if you can get into stage 2,
but it's also more car too. So it's they're
heavier.
The Golf Rs are surprisingly quick around track too. So it's a tough one to answer. Yeah, like Javad said, I think a lot of it's going to depend on your home tracks, what kind of tracks you're taking this thing to, and driving style.
Yeah,
they're both ridiculously capable compared to what we kind of started with for track cars.
Yeah,
back in the day.
No, they're both good cars. It's just Audis and Volkswagen Audis and brakes are a problem, and you just need to commit to doing brakes if you really want to get the most out of the car. Even a bone stock car needs big brakes and good pads, racing pads.
Yeah,
track to get the most out.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can take a stock car, you could flog it at its limit for maybe one lap, and it's going to overheat the brakes. So. Yep. They're street cars. You could never brake that much that hard on street unless you were going down a mountain or something, and you'll overheat your brakes going down a mountain too.
Yep.
So I purchased the ZF8 Beta tune kind of blindly for the Q5 3.0T. Was that what he told his wife? I don't know. I had no idea what I was doing. It just
fell into
my car. I couldn't pass up the price. Okay, well then it wasn't blind. What exactly is changed in the calibration? How are the downshifts? What is the launch RPM? Good questions. Yeah. Thank you for purchasing.
Right. There's a number of things changed. Like you've been saying, the ZF8 is still in beta, so there's going to be some stuff in flux. Upshifts and downshifts, we do change shift points. Primarily, it's on the upshifts at this point, just to increase obviously the peak shift RPM, as they're quite low stock. Launch RPMs and launch things are not really adjusted on this file. That's part of the beta. We will be updating those more. Shift speeds are increased. Some of the line pressures are increased to better deal and manage with the higher power shift performance. I'm trying to think what else is in there offhand. Torque limiter, torque management is increased for the higher output stuff. So it's a lot of changes that are kind of required to allow that transmission to work correctly with the higher output calibrations we do on the ECU side.
Nate, you forgot one of the biggest features.
Safety.
Yep. It's a lot safer.
It's a lot safer.
So enjoy your safety as well.
Yeah.
But more updates coming for that. And again, you made the right call getting it at this price.
Yeah, it's crazy cheap for what it is now. And then we'll be adding more and more of that. Of the other features in the shift improvements and shift point changes and launch setups and that kind of thing.
Someone's asking, will your B8 X34 be carb approved?
Yep,
it will be. We are working on that. So initially, our B8 and MQB intakes will be carb approved, but generally, we're still not done with the process. So take this with a grain of salt. But generally, when you go through with carb and you get certifications on some of your intakes, as long as all your other ones follow the same basic, format and make the same basic changes. Because how intakes are implemented on every emissions control vehicle are basically the same across any car or vehicle. Not quite true with the tuning and calibration, but the intake, there's always an intake. If there's secondary air, there's a tie-in. It's a pretty simple device. Carb doesn't care about filtering the air or anything like that. All they care about is any of the dirty stuff inside the motor get out easier. If you
right, yeah, and there's some esoteric stuff you wouldn't think would be a problem, like the
material.
The material. What is the actual materials you're using? Because that will affect just the material outgassing that occurs, how it interacts with some of the other stuff, what the engine's breathing in. So it's not just a how the intake's designed, it's how it's manufactured. It's built as well. But yeah, and we're lucky these days. A lot of the cars are MAF-less, so it's even easier to push intakes through. So yep, they're coming.
But just to say that none of our intakes increase emissions of the car, of the engine or the vehicle. So they're not dirty devices. Now they are still technically for racing use only until they get carb approval. And also, they're not like our high flow cats, which are only for racing use. They do increase emissions, although they're not dirty, but they're much, much cleaner than a test pipe. I mean, our racing cats apply to like emission standards from like 10 years ago in many cases. So they're clean products, but they're not smog legal, and they do increase the emissions out. So the intakes don't. But they're still not legal. So just giving you the both sides of it. Are there any cool events that 034 will be attending in the near future worth checking out? Summerfest reboot. We're still playing this by ear, but my current thinking is like a fall fest. I think we might be in good shape for that as early as, say, October. And then, of course, everyone wants to call it Oktoberfest, but I don't call it that. But we'll probably call it 034 Motorsport Fall Fest. And if we can do it, if things are opened back up and everyone's vaccinated and we can go around and do stuff, then we will definitely be doing that. So keep your hopes up for like October. November, the weather starts becoming an issue, things like that. But I think even if we could pull it off in September, that would be good. From everything I'm reading and hearing is that, the vaccinations are going well. All Americans should be vaccinated by the summer. And assuming that we're anywhere near herd immunity, then things should be able to open back up. But I do hear about a lot of people who don't want to get the vaccine either. And that's problematic for society to reopen to the degree we'd all like. We need to have at least 80% of people vaccinated. So I actually got my first shot recently and getting my second one soon. So I had no side effects after the first one, which is common. I feel really lucky to have the vaccine and to be able to get it. And it's amazing. I mean, it's an amazing modern miracle of science. So science isn't a miracle. It's a process. But anyways, I hope you guys all get it.
It's very much the opposite of that.
I hope you guys all get it, but get the vaccine. But if you don't, it's a free country. So, but we might all have to wear masks and not be able to go out in public a lot longer if you don't. All right. Now that I've probably pissed off half of our listeners. Any word on internals development for B8.5 S4, S5? I heard you guys talk about this update back in November. We've talked about it quite a bit, actually.
Yep.
We are currently in heavy-duty development on rods, pistons, and hardware. And fasteners, hardware, and things like that.
And some other stuff.
And other stuff. That's all we'll say right now. But yes, it's coming along. I think when you heard us talking about it in November, it was something we were just thinking about.
Yeah, we're kind of framing it out at that point.
And we have since fully engaged the process. So,
Yep.
we get asked about this a lot, and so we decided to kind of there's been some questions about this. So someone's asking why is your arm the best solution for my car? And this is related to our Dogbone arm products. Now we have a whole line of these products. The Dogbone started in the Mark IV era Volkswagen car. Mark IIIs did not have a Dogbone. But starting in the Mark IV era, Volkswagen Audi on all the transverse mounted motors, they went to a motor mount on each side of the transmission. So now you have a motor and transmission that are mounted and have stability from left to right.
Yeah,
and
and it holds
it's up and down.
it holds the motor in place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But these two mounts, what they cannot do is prevent the motor from twisting. And so Volkswagen Audi added a Dogbone mount. And so this is the basic architecture format. If you have one of these cars, I'm sure you know about this.
Well,
Just
and, yeah,
talk about it for 2 seconds.
it may also be referred to as a pendulum mount.
Pendulum mounts.
Depending on
Yeah.
kind of geographic and what the normals are.
Yeah, it's called a pendulum mount because it prevents the motor from penduluming. Otherwise, the motor would just do this. So these bushings here press into the subframe, and then this bolts to the bottom of the motor transmission assembly. And because this is rigid and because this is mounted with compliance, the motor now can twist and torque and not start spinning around like a pendulum. The factory ones are pretty soft and squishy. They allow quite a bit of fore-aft movement. And so if you've ever had your car in a dyno with stock motor mounts, you've probably seen amazing, crazy bouncing back and forth of the motor and transmission assembly. That fore-aft movement is being facilitated by a lot of play and a lot of slop in this Dogbone pendulum mount assembly. So what tuning companies started doing is they started stiffening up these bushings. And there's another issue where with the factory parts, if you do a real hard launch, this piece is cast aluminum from the factory in earlier models. The MQB era went to a stamped steel assembly, but the earlier cast versions in the Mark IV, Mark V, Mark VI are well known for breaking. So companies like us offer solid billet aluminum upgrades. We offer a solid billet arm for the MQB to replace the stamped steel piece. The stamped steel pieces generally don't break or have those types of issues. I've seen them bend. But what we do is the stamped steel piece has a rubber bushing on one side where it connects to where it pivots on the motor. And we replace that with a solid spherical. So you've now eliminated a major point of slop there. So I mentioned that a lot of tuners, I'm just riffing with this. This is a prepared presentation or anything, but if you have any questions, feel free to chime in. Sean, let me know if anyone has follow-ups. But I mentioned that tuners stiffen up these rubber bushings. So one thing that became popular is sticking a poly insert inside the voids of these Dogbone pucks, as they're often referred to. What sticking something in that void does is it naturally makes the motor stiff, the mount stiffer. The poly, though, the problem is polyurethane's not the best product in an automotive environment. It can tend to break down. And if you've ever run one of these polyurethane inserts, you've probably seen it get hard, crumble, break. A lot of our customers talk about having to pick out the pieces that are stuck in there because it just the poly insert no longer comes out. So after seeing that and being aware of that issue, we came to market before anyone. We really innovated this product, and it's a billet aluminum insert that goes in and fills the voids. It fills the voids on the front and the back of the mount.
Yeah, I think you can see it on this one pretty well.
Yeah, that's the cutaway. But it goes in the bottom of the mount, and it fills those voids so that the gaps in this lower mount are filled. Okay, so that immediately reduces the amount of movement in this mount with very little NVH or any kind of issues or compromises. We were the first to do that. APR copied us about a year after that, and now there's all kinds of knockoffs on the market and stuff. But one issue that arose once we did that, the force on this Dogbone is supposed to be exactly in line with this mount. And this is our mounts with our inserts. I can't flex this at all; it's stiff. But normally there's a pulling and pushing force in and out on this. That's direct in line with the pendulum. But what happened is once we filled the voids in the bottom of the mount reliably with our aluminum insert, this straight pulling force turned into a vector. And so and we have videos of this on the product page if you guys want to see it, and I think on our YouTube channel. But it started creating an angular force on this assembly, where instead of the forces being like this, they moved like this. So what would happen is the entire mount would flex at an angle on the Dogbone insert, and the inserts would bend. The inserts are straight and perpendicular, and as long as the forces are straight and perpendicular on this mount, then there's no bending force. But by only filling the bottom, we introduced a bending force unwittingly, unknowingly, and nobody else in the industry knew this either, because APR again copied our product and released it, and they were having the same problem with their stainless steel inserts were bending as well. So we looked into the problem. We obviously had a lot of customers complain. Initially, we thought that the inserts were too thin, and so we made them thicker. We had several revisions. We gave a bunch, anyone who's ever had a problem with this, we gave them a new updated version. But our engineering team finally determined after looking at some videos of this mount functioning with the insert that there was this bending force all of a sudden, and it was because we weren't filling the void in the top as well. So the bottom was no longer flexing, but the top was, and so that created that angular force. So we released quite a while ago our upper insert, and this was an innovation that we're very proud of. It's not rocket science once you really look into it, although we missed it and so did everyone else. And we now sell our lower insert with our upper insert together as a kit, and they need to be run together. If you run them together, there's no longer any bending forces. Everything works just as it should. We have, again, video on this on our website. And it's a really nice functioning setup with minimal NVH and much better engine and transmission movement and control. Unfortunately, there is this perception out there, and it's true going back like 5 years ago that our inserts bend. So our inserts used to bend, so did everyone else's. But once this upper insert was installed, there's no more bending. Any insert on Earth would have bent, and I don't care if you made a like tungsten carbide, it would break. Yep. But there was a massive bending force, like up to 45 degrees on this mount, and so it's going to destroy anything that you put in that gap.
Yeah, and it was also with that basically you turned this into a pivot point where this puck was fixed, this puck wasn't, so the whole thing just wants to twist here.
It turns into a hinge.
And it would start bending these arms depending on what generation mount you had. So it was both the arm and the mount were getting impacted by this twisting.
That's right. There should only be a pulling and pushing force on this, but there was now a shear force being created by this angular momentum, and it would break the mounts as well. Since we fixed this, and since we implemented the upper insert, these have been installed on 8-second RS3s and just about anything you can imagine. We sell a lot of these products. These are our top selling products. Our pendulum mount, our inserts, are some of our like core products that keep this place open and running. And we're really proud of the product line that we have. There are some knockoffs out there. The funny part is we've actually had companies knock off our older versions that we've improved on since, and we can see that. But if you want the best, most current, highest quality, most engineered product on the market, that's what we sell and that's what we offer. We sell them for very fair, reasonable prices. We don't price gouge, but yeah, if some Alibaba somewhere or another gets a hold of one of ours and they can knock it off, and they have no customer support, they have no engineering, they have no idea what they're even selling other than they know if they put the right words on Alibaba that you'll end up there if you do a search. If you want to give your support to those kind of companies, best of luck to you. We're not here to serve you. We are here to serve the customers in the market who are passionate about high quality products, who appreciate engineering, innovation, who appreciate having people behind the products who literally lose sleep at night over this if it's not corrected. And I'll be honest, we had some stressful moments over these products in the past. They haven't been stressful in years.
Nope, they've been good now.
But I definitely lost some sleep over this in the past, and we don't like letting down our customers. We never do. So let's see. There were some other questions. These are very modular products, so you can buy just the Dogbone pendulum arm by itself. You can buy just the pucks by themselves. You can buy the inserts by themselves. So you can upgrade these in stages. There are some competitors out there that you basically cut out the factory pucks and put in poly there. We didn't go that direction because the factory solution is actually really nice. Rubber is the right material for these mounts. And so by using our highly and carefully engineered inserts, we can really fine tune and tailor the performance of these mounts without forcing the customer to go in there and like cut out their factory mounts and do all that. If you do want something stiffer than what the factory mount offers, then we went for just the pucks by themselves, and these press in just like factory mounts. These take our inserts as well, so you can double up. So the fastest, most powerful cars that need the most support are running our upgraded density pucks, both inserts, and the pendulum arm. And then you combine that with our motorsport mounts, like we have for the MQB, for the DAZA, for
Basically,
going back to Mark IV.
These mounts, yeah.
Anything that uses this, we have a motorsport equivalent. You are looking at the ultimate motor mounting and drivetrain mounting solution on the market. No one comes close.
That would be like 2 liter and up.
Yeah.
The littler motors have different motor mounts, but
and we offer the complete package. You don't have to like buy the Dogbone from one person and the mounts from another and whatever. So we have these parts on race cars. They're on all of our development cars. We sell many thousands a year of these parts. So these are very well tested, proven, and highly utilized and used products on the market. And that's always been our goal, is to bring that level of quality to the market. Metal, someone's asking us, does metal cause excess vibrations? The metal itself does not cause excess vibrations. The only way that this metal insert can cause excess vibrations is if for some reason the hard part on the inside touches the hard part on the outside. And then you have a short circuit of vibrations that travel through that. But as long as the insert is correctly designed, there is no additional vibration. I suspect that some of these poorly designed knockoffs, they're short circuiting different parts of the mounts, and that's where some of these NVH complaints.
And we have seen some install issues where if the mount's not installed correctly and doesn't socket down into the gaps correctly, that can put it into a binding situation as well.
It has to be installed correctly.
It's got to be installed correctly, and your mount has to be centered when you install it, because it's going to fill up the gap on both sides. If your mount has aged and is relaxed one way or the other, there's some load on it that can be tricky to get it installed correctly.
All right. Any follow-ups on that, Sean, or any comments? Okay. All right, so let's move on to the next topic. RE timing. What is the ideal max boost for a B8 Stage 2 Plus tune? I have an aggressive pulley ratio, and I'm worried max boost plus max timing equals kaboom.
Is that a kaboom, or is it just
fire?
Fire.
Well, I don't know. So if it's
fire means it's supposed to light off your.
I think it's supposed to be bad.
We've talked about this a lot. I am not a fan of running, aggressive pulley ratios. They generally just introduce a lot more heat than they do motive force. So we're always going to say run the smallest pulley you can for what you're trying to achieve. Running big lower pulleys and little upper pulleys is tough to control. It's tough to keep the temperatures where they're where things are going to be happy. We're at the limit of what the fuel system can provide. There's a lot of things that you start running into the limits of as you go with bigger and bigger pulley ratios, and the downsides start stacking up pretty quick for the heat generated, the efficiency of the supercharger is just nosediving. So, I don't like going any bigger than the 190 on the lower and then our upper pulley. I know there's guys out there that run a lot higher than that. But it's usually tough to get those setups running, strong all the time and reliably and keep them cool and keep things, optimal. So yeah, that's kind of why we only have the 190 mil, and then the 179 is what we generally recommend for the guys that are up, tracking the cars all the time and really need to keep those air temps managed correctly. Pull after pull after pull.
Yeah, I mean, you have to keep in mind boost or forcing a certain pressure of air inside a motor is not what creates horsepower and torque.
Yeah, and I actually meant to follow up also that is very dependent on what fuel you're running. E40 will do a lot better on a higher pulley ratio than say 91 or 93 or even 100. So if you're running 91, 93, I would always recommend like a 179 mil lower and enjoy it. You're gonna have a nice, pretty optimized setup for the given fuel. If you're able to go to an E40, 190 mil lowers with our upper pulley, works really well.
Well, once you really start understanding what is the mechanism inside the motor that forces the piston down with enough force to generate peak horsepower and torque, you can quickly see that combination of factors, that boost is only just one of them.
Yeah.
And the amount of air, which is the boost, the amount of fuel, which is fuel ratio, and then frankly, the most important thing is when does that wave of pressure begin, and at what point does that wave of pressure act on the piston? And that is very much related to timing, engine timing.
Yeah.
So you could force 100 psi of pressure into a combustion chamber and a motor that can withstand it, but if that explosion happens at the wrong time, then not only is it going to not make horsepower, it's going to shove the rod and piston back down the engine's throat, like in a really bad way.
Usually it doesn't go down either. It
just goes into pieces. Yeah. But, and we have a whole piece on this. Maybe you want to reference that, or if you can find it, Sean. But, the key is the explosion and the pressure wave has to happen when the piston's heading back down. But it has to start when the piston's on the way up.
Yeah, that flame front isn't instant. It takes time. We're talking milliseconds here.
It is instant. But in that how that works, within that instant, there's many milliseconds and microseconds when things happen. So people get hyper focused on boost because there's a gauge on the dash, and sure, up to a certain point, the more boost you make, the more power you make. But once you run out of timing, then more boost is worse. And so, if you had unlimited octane fuel and you could light off, you could give as much timing as you wanted to whatever amount of boost that you could run, then sure, but that's not real life.
Yep. We live in a world where compromises are what control us. So we've got to pick our battles, and we will generally always try and steer you to a more what we would consider a reasonable pulley ratio, and you will generally enjoy things a lot longer for with a lot more consistent power output.
So it's just like anything else. I mean, it's just like your body's powered by glucose, and if you don't have enough, you die. If you have just the right amount, you have optimal energy and health, and then if you hit too much, you get diabetes, and then literally you start dying. Parts of your body die. If you get too much glucose in your cells, then they stop working. So this is very similar to boost. You need the right amount, but more doesn't always equal better. People I think there's still a hard time.
Yeah, I mean, if there were no compromises, why wouldn't we have 200 and whatever millimeter pulleys all the time? Running on everything, and we'd be recommending those. But there's
Well, then there's this whole other factor of efficiency for the pressure creating device. So in this case, it's a supercharger, and it can it produce more boost? Yes, but at some point it just starts producing heat. And so now you have to do something with all that heat. There's a offset at a certain point. So there's an optimal efficiency for for the supercharger, where it creates the most boost with the least amount of heat, that's where you kind of want to be. But as soon as you start going away from that, as soon as you go above that, then now you're dealing with all this heat, and heat is working against your ability to make more power. So
yeah, somebody just chimed in. We need a turbo kit. We've talked about this too. Putting a turbo kit on the 3-liter is, to do it in an engineered,
make it faster
product. Yeah, in an engineered product that you could buy and install with all the documentation that's required, with all the software support, with all of the, all of the details you would expect from a complete kit is probably going to cost more than the cars do at this point.
Yeah. Thoughts on front mount intercoolers versus direct fit intercoolers for the MQB platform? The factory fitments, upgraded intercoolers for the MQB are the way to go, in my opinion.
We've had really good luck with. I mean, what's the AC condenser, whether it's in front of it, is not really an impact that we've seen. That's worth completely re-engineering the whole front core structure to get around that.
Yeah, that's really nice. I'd recommend getting one of those. We'll actually be coming out with our own. So.
Yep.
We should have a sample of it actually very soon.
Yep.
Does an open element intake have any benefit over closed element intake for the MQB GTI-R? It can, and we've talked about this, if the closed intake is shrouded, so if the filter is too close to the air box, then that affects flow. I don't care how big your air filter is.
And in that case, the bigger the filter, the bigger the problem.
It's funny. It's just like throughout these shows, there's just this theme of like optimization, equilibrium. Like, is a bigger air filter better? If that's all you're dealing with, if your entire universe is the size of the filter, then yes, make it as big as you can. Make it the entire size of the car. But it's not. There's also restrictions that get created by sticking too big of a filter in too small of an area. So now you have a huge filter that air literally can't go into. Open and closed intakes can work optimally if they're designed in an optimal way. So there's one very popular intake on the market that if they just made the filter smaller, it would flow more. But everyone thinks that you need a huge filter to flow the most, so they actually sell a product that flows less because of this misconception that people have where they're hyper-focused on one variable and not all the variables that create the outcome. I mean, what makes an optimal performing intake is made up of a combination of 5 or 6 factors that all have to be in consideration with each other. And if one factor takes too much of the priority, then it's at the detriment of all the others. And the net result is worse. I don't know. I mean, I think there should be a lot of people out there that understand this, but I don't know why. It seems like it feels like sometimes I'm the only one ever talking about this. I run one of the biggest DIY speaker building groups on earth on Facebook, and it's the same thing. People grab one variable about one speaker and they optimize it to the nth degree, and they get a terrible result because they've completely ignored all the other variables that factor into the result, whether they like it or not. So I think there's a lot of professional, smart people who are probably watching this that are shaking your heads and nodding yes. So I drag raced for years in many front-wheel drive cars, going to be bringing my 2020 S3 to a road course track day in the next couple months. Any upgrade suggestions?
We talked about it a little bit in the beginning, brake stuff for the vehicle, but I mean, if this is going to be one of your first track events, it's going to be mostly driver mod stuff for a while. Get the car to a safe, reliable point, and then just work on your driving, and that's going to go a long, long, long way on this.
Yeah. Definitely driver mod. Maybe go out for a couple times and work on you. And you've drag raced, but that's not the same as a road course, right? That's completely different. There's literally no correlation.
Yeah, they almost couldn't be more different venues.
Drag racing takes a lot of skill.
Yep.
Certainly, when you're going 5 or 6 seconds or faster, it takes. I mean, honestly, anything 9 seconds or lower, you could kill yourself pretty easily if you screw up. But road course driving is learning how to control the dynamics of a vehicle as it goes through a corner.
Yeah, the actual acceleration is almost one of the smallest aspects of the road. That's the easiest thing is being able to accelerate and get the thing going.
No, that's when you can adjust your seat.
That's you're relaxing, you're checking your mirrors,
you're going down the front
behind you.
straight.
That's by far the fastest parts of the road course are generally the easiest parts.
Yeah. But you're going to have to learn a lot about driving and controlling a car and modulating throttle, braking, steering, the direction and attitude and speed of a car. How much do you brake going into a corner? How much do you accelerate at one point in the corner, coming out of the corner? Using trailing throttle, using trailing braking, finding every little moment you can to accelerate. So that's all but our products will help you do that better as you learn and grow. You don't need them initially, but certainly if you wanted to do our sway bars and springs, and some of our inserts, I would say that would give you a good experience.
Really good starting point.
You don't need them again, but that's where I think that's where anyone should start.
Yep. Yeah. And then if you're naturally, talented, you're feeling very comfortable out there, you will notice pretty quickly that your tires are going to be wearing pretty heavily on the outside. And then that comes back to the camber plate discussion we had earlier. That does help immensely on track day driving.
Yeah. And I would recommend keeping your stock tires for a while, because you want the car to be closer to the, you want less traction, less grip.
Yep.
You want to find out what happens when, the car pushes or when the back end starts coming around. When you try to hit apex and you can't because the car's pushing, you want that to happen at a lower speed so that you can interact with it more safely. And like a good sticky arc compound tire is going to move that. It might happen normally 40 miles an hour in a corner, and now that's going to be 60 miles an hour through that corner with those tires.
They tend to be very different in how they release from that traction as well. So your stock tire, you're just going to start. You'll feel it start sliding and pushing. A really sticky, kind of track dedicated tire may not give you nearly the same amount of information before it lets go.
Yep. All right. I think we got to start wrapping up. Someone's asking, will you be developing MQB Coil Packs? Yes, we are working on those. So we actually tested another popular option on the market, and they were actually less powerful than stock coils. They generated more initial voltage, but what actually made it to the spark plug was less than stock. Right. So we are looking into completely re-engineering the coil to actually produce a more powerful spark, something in the range of 5 to 10% more powerful versus 5 to 10% less powerful.
Yeah. Well, and it's the measurements are pretty tricky. It's not very common that people are measuring a spark, spark output. But the aftermarket coils that are on the market currently actually take, I think it was 10% more energy to charge the coil. Yeah. And resulted in it's like 10% less actual spark energy at the plug itself. So, if you're measuring only what goes in, maybe that's what they're basing it off of.
Yeah. Because the coil charges, so electricity goes into the coil, and the longer the coil is exposed to that energy, the more voltage and amperage builds inside that coil, and then when it releases. So this particular company, they're building and charging more, but that doesn't matter. It's when you release it, what goes to the spark plug is less.
So I think what it's essentially is just building heat at that point. You're introducing energy into the coil,
right?
That's then not getting released into the plug.
Yeah. So the goal is to generate more voltage and amperage and make sure it gets to the spark plug, and that's what we'll be working on. So my advice to anyone who has factory coils is to keep them. I haven't seen anything that's an upgrade. There's nothing wrong with the factory coils, in fact.
No.
I know there's different color ones that, and if you gotta have a different colored coil, I don't know what to tell you. But I wouldn't go there yet. I would really make sure that what you're getting is actually better than stock. There's no reason to downgrade. Are we wrapping up?
Yeah, we're actually out of time now.
All right.
Yep.
Well, cool. Hey, this isn't car related, but this has been something that's been on my mind, and I wanted to just throw out there. Everyone listening to this has people in their lives and friendships and relationships, and I just wanted to reiterate, you get as much out of those relationships as you put in. And so, if you're unhappy with the people in your life, think about investing in them more and giving them the time that they deserve, and that will come back to you. So that's something that's been on my mind. So best of luck out there. And we'll see you guys next week.
Take care.